Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for inviting me to talk with the group. I'm excited that we get to talk a little bit about innovation in live and online learning events. So as I mentioned earlier today, my group is really focused on pulling through our core messaging through lots of different channels and making sure that our messages are proliferating across all of the channels that our HCP customers have access to. And so this is a little case study in one of the events that we explored in a new channel that we pursued this year. So this is my upfront disclaimer that these are my opinions and not necessarily those of Astellas. I also want to point out that I tried to live tweet Drake, but he is not available to join me for my presentation today. my case did not really make it high on his list of priorities. But anyway, just excited to be here to share some learnings with you all today. So we'll spend a little bit of time on my bio, just because I want to talk about how it fits in with multi-channel marketing, the importance of multi-channel marketing approach at launch, the importance of the customer perspective. I talked about this a lot this morning, and this is really core to a lot of the innovation work that my team does, as well as a quick overview of the campaign, and then the results and learnings that we had coming out of that. So as mentioned, I've been at Astellas now for a little over 6 years, and I've had the opportunity to work on a brand from the pre-launch state all the way through its now 4th new label update. And so being in a position to do that, I've had a lot of opportunity to see how a brand matures and how you can explore innovative new channels to continue to engage with customers in an ongoing way. Prior to Astellas, overall I've had about 20 years of experience, all of which has been interacting with HCPs in some way, shape, or form across 3 different industries. So I have a little bit of a non-traditional background. I actually started out in finance, then transitioned into strategic consulting, and am now in pharma. So even though it's kind of all over the board, it's all been healthcare focused. I love working in healthcare. I love the complexity and the challenge of the industry that we've all chosen to work in. And most importantly, I love that the patient is at the center of everything. In all of those years and interactions with customers too, I think one of the key takeaways that I've learned is that, HCPs at the end of the day are consumers. They're customers. They're just like us. They have, even though they work in a doctor's office during the day, doesn't mean they're not, using all the same channels that we are and having the same reactions to some of the marketing tactics that are tried on us throughout the days. And so I love opening with this cartoon because I think it really speaks to the complexity and the importance of a multi-channel approach and the buying decisions of customers, right? So people are exposed to our brands many, many times before they ultimately pull the trigger on a plan, on a purchase, right? And same thing with doctors. They have multiple interactions with our brands before they get in front of a rep or before they decide to use it for a patient. And we still struggle as an industry to really correctly attribute where those different interactions are influencing the most. And the reality is, it's all of these interactions together that are ultimately taking a position from awareness to trial to utilization. So one of the things that we as digital marketers have as an opportunity in front of us is really this ability to provide some of that air cover and some of that multi-channel coverage so that we can open up the door for a rep to walk in and have a really productive conversation. When we're launching new products, as marketers, one of our goals is always to drive peak awareness as fast as possible. So, a recent survey that I saw was stating that a quarter of physicians, so 1 in 4 physicians, is actually ready to try a new product the minute that they learn about it. So that tells us even more how important it is that this peak awareness gets hit as quickly as possible. So speed to peak is a key priority for us, obviously. So while that's our priority, it's obviously not the priority of our customers, right? So the HCPs that we interact with have a ton on their plate. First and foremost, and the thing that I always keep top of mind is, the patient burden that they have. They're seeing, in some specialties, tens of, hundreds of patients a day. They've got a lot of action in their office. They have to keep that first and foremost, right? They're also business owners. So we work with urologists and oncologists a lot. And the urology practices that they're running take time. They have their own, they all need to have MBAs in addition to their MDs, right? Like they've got this whole business that they're running. Plus they're not only learning about our drugs, but they're learning about everyone else's drugs as well. and my very scientific calculation of about 10,000 other things that they're working on simultaneously. So while our priority at a new product launch is obviously teaching them about our drug, it's not necessarily at the top of their list, as we all know. So what can we do to make it as easy as possible for the customer to learn about a new indication? That in my mind is customer centricity, and that in my mind is how we should approach all of our marketing efforts. And so, we do have a number of channels that we know work well in pharma. Reps are obviously our bread and butter, and we know, 40% of physicians still say they rely on the rep on a weekly basis for information about products, but we know there are also challenges with the rep channel. So the big one is obviously access. So we know it's diminishing, and some of the specialties that we work with, it's particularly challenging given the patient burden and different pressures that the physicians are facing. But it's still a big one. Another one that's extremely influential, and we've talked a lot about this today with regard to social media marketing, but is the peer-to-peer channel. So with physicians, in the same survey, they're telling us that 80% of them are relying on a colleague or a friend to help them learn about new medications on a weekly basis, which is huge, right? In pharma marketing, we often think, when we think peer-to-peer, we think live speaker programs, which are great and they're tried and true, and we all do them. However, when you're talking about a new indication and a new launch, there's obviously challenges from a speed and scale perspective. They're very labor intensive to set up. We have to, create our speaker deck. We have to get all of our speakers trained. We have to have the reps out in the field really recruiting to these events and getting physicians in the door. So it can be challenging. So knowing all of that and knowing all the channels that we have access to, what can we do? How can we innovate? How can we do better by our customers? And so what we were really looking for was an engaging way to bring peer-to-peer coverage of key new data to many HCPs quickly in a way that's convenient for them. And I underlined a few keywords in this statement because this is really what we're utilizing to help us drive our KPIs and help us understand how did we do. Did we do a good job of achieving what we said we wanted to achieve? And so the campaign that we pursued in this case to solve this issue in particular was a live national broadcast where we had 2 nationally recognized KOLs present our key new indication information in a live setting, and then had that piped through to many different locations throughout the country on the day of the broadcast. So I built a little timeline here just to give you a sense of kind of when this was happening, but we had our new indication launch first, and then we created a series of recruiting materials that were used both by the reps as well as through different non-personal channels in order to drive traffic to the live national broadcast. And on the day of the live national broadcast, we had 4 different airing times. So speaking to convenience and making sure that we're accessible to our customers, this really allowed them the opportunity to choose the time of day that worked best for them, so that we were really making it as easy as possible for them to get access to this new information. Additionally, we brought these programs to them, right? Traditional speaker program dinners are at a restaurant after a very long day in the office, and sometimes it can be hard to even imagine how you could possibly go out and talk about more work after that. So this was an opportunity for our reps to bring this content and bring these 2 nationally recognized KOLs into their office and stream that content to them there with their peers and colleagues that they're going to be practicing with on a daily basis. The live event also featured a live Q&A session, which was a key piece of this program, because with a lot of on-demand programs, which we all use quite a bit as well now, that element of peer-to-peer interaction and sort of understanding how others are using the product or others are facing the situation is lost because it's a recording. But this actually, the process that we use actually let us set up a live Q&A session too for each of those 4 broadcasts on the main day. So we talked a little bit about how we drove traffic to this event, but essentially we had sort of two aspects to it. We had a live in-person resources that the reps could bring in. So not only were we recruiting to the event, but we were also giving the reps an access tool to get into the office and say, hey, I have Dr. So-and-so from Northwestern who's going to do this broadcast, and so bringing them an access tool. They also had access to email invitations, which they could use as a different channel to outreach to customers. And we also did a great deal of non-personal marketing to the physicians themselves via target list match with our third-party partner. The third-party partner also did some tele-recruiting. We subsequently followed up with 2 encore broadcast days. So the reps could walk in after the live broadcast and sort of ask if the physicians had attended, and if they hadn't, they could re-offer it. So there were additional opportunities later in the month for them to participate via the encore broadcast. And we had 3 different airings on each of those days. So how did we do? So these are the terms that I had underlined on the prior slide. Was the tactic engaging? Anecdotally and based on customer and rep feedback, we've been told it was very engaging. The live Q&A was a big portion of that. So physicians were able to sit in a room with their peers, ask questions of one another. If they couldn't answer them collectively, they could type them into the WebEx, and the questions would be asked of the 2 KOLs. So it was received as a very engaging platform. It was peer-to-peer, so I think there are 2 aspects of the peer-to-peer that we really hit on with this one. One was obviously the national KOLs, the utilization of them, but also the ability for them to watch this content with the people that they'd be working with and with the people that they would be integrating this new indication into their practice alongside of was really helpful in facilitating that roundtable type of discussion. Did we hit many physicians? We did. We were told by our third-party partner that this was the engagement rates that we saw were 40% higher than a program done in a similar therapeutic area. I don't have the specific numbers to share because they're proprietary, obviously, but we do work in a sort of smaller disease state, and this was a tactic that enabled us to reach more than we had ever reached before in a single tactic investment. Quickly, so our national airing was 4 weeks after receiving notification from the FDA, which is incredibly fast to be able to hit that type of volume from a customer perspective. And was it convenient for the HCPs? The fact that we had 10 different airings enabled them to really decide when it worked for them to learn about this new indication. From a results and wins perspective, there's really 3 key ways that we've been looking at it so far, and we'll be doing additional analytics. This is a very recent example, but we'll be doing some more traditional ROI analysis and that type of thing as well. But we did have significantly more HCP engagements via the peer-to-peer channel in the 6 weeks post-launch than prior launch periods. So on our product's case, we actually have a lot of historical data that we can look at and see sort of when, what the different numbers were and compare and contrast. We also have seen a great speed and time to peak unaided and aided awareness. So it's tracking faster than in prior launches as well. And then we've also received a great deal of positive field and customer feedback, as well as good buzz created around the event itself. And so that's all, we've been talking a lot about social influence today, and I loved that quote that was used earlier about it's no longer about what we tell them the product is for, it's about what they tell one another the product is for. And so this was a great way for us to have a lot of prominent physicians in our therapeutic area talking about our new indication on our behalf. A couple of key learnings that are important for us as we talked this morning about piloting and iterating, and are we going to do it again, and if we are, what are we going to learn and how are we going to do it differently. The live Q&A was difficult to execute from an MLR perspective, as you can imagine, sort of filtering the questions that were coming in live and how do we make sure we're asking ones that are appropriate to ask and triaging the other ones in another way. But it was highly valued by the customers. And so we're going through a process now of just trying to determine, what is an easier way for us to do this? How do we reduce the friction in that process so that it's a more positive experience overall? Diminishing returns after 6 weeks. So when we look at the numbers of participants, we did see a big drop off between the live national broadcast to the subsequent encore broadcast, and then a really steep cliff for the second encore broadcast. So that's probably something we wouldn't invest in again going forward. We just have so many other awareness tactics kind of running in the background that by the time the 8 weeks had passed, we didn't necessarily need this one in particular anymore. The reps need the maximum time possible with the recruitment material. So we had them out to the reps as quickly as we thought was possible. But at the end of the day, they had about 2 weeks, and I think they could have used more. So we're looking at different approaches for staggering some of those, getting some of those, as I talked about this morning, in that draft status where we can get them out even faster than that. Cross-channel integration planning upfront can maximize pull-through and customer learnings. So really thinking strategically upfront about what we want to do with the data afterwards and how do we want to empower the reps with the data on who participated. So another aspect of this program was that the reps could drive the programs or the physicians could dial in and participate alone. And so if that happened, we've created a data feedback channel where those individual physician records will get pushed back to our reps, and the reps will know who participated so that they can follow up with them quickly. And then lastly, in-person follow-up is key. So we get the awareness, we get the awareness driven quickly at the launch, we get the information out there, and then it becomes even more important for the reps to go in there and close it and ensure that, that these physicians are ready to take the next step with the new indication. So that's all I had prepared. Any questions about this program or our approach in general?
Hi, thanks. With the reps receiving information about which physicians had participated, are you providing the reps with next best action?
Yes, that's
How does
essentially
that
the
go over
platform.
with your reps?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one that we're living in real time right now. So we are doing it through sort of a next best action type platform. So, we basically take the information, ingest it internally, and then push it back out to the rep as, Dr. So-and-so recently participated in the national broadcast. Now may be a good time for you to follow up with them, something to that effect. And what we're finding internally is that it's a new platform for our team as well. And so we have, as marketers, some internal marketing to do in terms of driving awareness of the platform, driving awareness of how impactful our own internal platform can be and how important some of those insights can be to being even more aware of where your customer is on their journey.
Can you discuss the regulatory implications of having live questions and live answers with your name somewhere on it?
Sure. Yeah. So it was interesting. So the live question and answer was facilitated during the broadcast itself. So we were in a recording studio, and the system that we used sort of helped us triage the questions. And so what we ended up doing was having legal and regulatory in the room with us. And so they helped us. They came with us to the studio, and they sat with us and helped us triage the questions. And that, in my mind, is there were moments where it was stressful, but they had been brought along with us. We brought them with us all the way through the process in terms of, this is what we're trying to do. This is how we propose we do it. If you have any suggestions, let's talk about them now. So they were bought in when we were there. We're doing live Q&A, and you're going to help us do it in a way that works, for everyone. And so that was really important to have that partnership and that trust, set up in the upfront. But there are, I think there'll be more clarity we can get around guidelines and that kind of thing the next time that we do it, so that we can make that even smoother. And it won't be the first time for everyone either, which will automatically make it easier, right?
Good point.
All right.
Go in the back.
Okay.
They didn't want 2 weeks for questions.
No, thankfully.
Hi, thank you very much. Can you help me understand, for the encore presentations, were those just a live rebroadcast of the initial live presentation? Did you also have live Q&A?
Yeah.
Were your initial speakers present for that as well, or did you bring in new speakers to answer live questions? I'm trying to understand, because we're considering doing something similar,
Yeah.
so this is really interesting to learn.
Good, yeah.
Thank you.
So on the day of the live broadcast itself, the 4 different airings all featured a live Q&A session. And so the speakers stayed with us throughout the day, and legal and regulatory stayed with us throughout the day. And so those were all live. We recorded one of those, and that was what was pushed through during the encores. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.